Violence begets violence. And lawlessness begets lawlessness. What you see happening across the country right now, from Minnesota to LA to Houston, what you see is not lawlessness. Lawlessness is what happened to George Floyd. Lawlessness is what happened to Ahmaud Arbery. What happened to Breonna Taylor and Kenneth Walker. That's the lawlessness. What you see are the citizens attempting to establish law, not reestablish it, because this country's never had law. This country has never had order. It's always had white supremacist chaos. And that is the very definition of lawlessness. Now you have the citizens attempting to institute law, trying to institute order for the very first time. And those in the corridors of power, from Congress to the president, are quaking in their boots because they understand that the only thing that's actually made it where the enforcement arm of white supremacy has had any authority is that the people were willing to bow to it. Now they're seeing what happens when the people decide, no, you're not arresting us. We're going to fight you in the streets. The cops can't do anything about it. And the cops are trying to cop a plea with the public. The white media's got the cameras out there for them. Go ahead and have the lying police chief of Houston say that he was disgusted by the video of George Floyd being choked to death. Yeah, but was he disgusted by the video of Alva Brazil in Houston being gunned down by 2 Houston race soldiers? Was he disgusted by that? Oh, the Cincinnati PD, they absolutely are opposed to what they saw in Minneapolis. Yeah, were they opposed to the murder of John Crawford? I'll wait. So you got all these cops now. The white media is trying to figure out a way to polish up their image and try to soften their image. And why? The police are just as outraged as you. The police are the ones who have been doing this. And while the white media thinks that they're scoring points by showing us this or that police department where the chief gives a few clearly insincere words of phony sympathy to the public, I can point to you a half dozen examples of each one of those police departments executing black people and no one being punished for it. So no, white media, you're not getting away with nothing. And by the way, if you check out my Twitter feed, you can see how CNN got to see a little visit from the public. Oh, why would the public be kicking in the doors of CNN? Because for the last 6 years at least, CNN's been acting as the chief cheerleaders for the murders of black people. Trayvon Martin was murdered, and you had Brooke Baldwin, that racist hag. She was on television calling herself questioning that congresswoman, saying, well, would anyone be caring about Trayvon Martin if he wasn't black? Yeah, because the white media never cares about the missing white woman of the week. This was Brooke Baldwin saying this about the death of a black child, the murder of a child. She tries this garbage. Mika, the bigot Brzezinski over at MSNBC, she's trying to act like, oh, how sad, how sad. And she was the one who was showing just pure contempt for the murder of Tamir Rice. Go find the video that I also posted on my Twitter feed. You have to go in the archives to find these things. I'm not going to do all the homework for you. But you can find the videos of when Tamir Rice had been murdered. Mika Brzezinski was leading the charge going, well, didn't he take the orange tip off of the toy gun he had? And that would have easily made the police think that maybe he had a real gun. And when people were telling her about it, she was on air. And I'll never forget this. She's making all sorts of completely cynical, completely sarcastic faces while people are talking about the murder of a 12-year-old child. And here Mika Brzezinski is going out of her way to show, though, how ridiculous, rolling her eyes, head to the side, just shaking her head. She's going out of her way to show how ridiculous. Why are we even talking about this? That was Mika Brzezinski. That's how she reacted to the death of a child. And now she's trying to reinvent herself. So if CNN wants to know why it is that the unwashed masses washed up in front of their newsroom and we're throwing explosive devices in there, it's because CNN, along with MSNBC and the rest of the white media, have been acting as spokespeople for anti-black violence for years. When Freddie Gray was murdered, CNN decided that, well, we can't dirty him up. We can't resort to the usual anti-black narrative, so we'll talk about his mother instead. We'll say his mother was a drug addict. What's that got to do with anything? Well, his mother was a drug addict. And the white media is getting visited. Right now, the powers that be are not sure how the world they can stop this. Because what's happened in the past is, well, all you have to do is have an arrest of the race soldiers who have brutalized or murdered some black person, and that'll calm the folks down. See, we're doing something. See, you wanted an arrest, we got an arrest. People are like, no, we have to have a conviction, and it has to be a punishment to the level that we are satisfied with. Justice is not whatever the DA says it is. Justice is what the public says it is. And the public says that when you have murdered a black person, you got to get death penalty. Capital punishment now goes on the table. And if the DA thinks that he's going to get out of it by saying, well, I went with third-degree murder. No, third-degree murder. That is a slap on the wrist, especially when you consider that the DA, we've been asking what's he been doing for the last few days. It was obvious, and now he's confirmed it for us. The DA, this Mike Freeman character, along with the medical examiner in Hennepin County, they have put together a preliminary autopsy, which basically looks and reads as if it was written by the defense, saying that, oh, there was no, you didn't see what you guys saw. Oh, yeah, we know you guys saw the video. Yeah, he said he can't breathe, but you didn't see what you saw. He didn't die from strangulation. He didn't die from asphyxia. Yeah, he was sure. He stopped breathing, but that was because of artery disease. He already had some pre-existing conditions. They're trying the exact same pack of lies that they did with Eric Garner. But that wouldn't wash. Even if it was another obese black man, it wouldn't work. George Floyd, this guy was in fantastic physical shape. He's running around with a black t-shirt on. And here he is. You can tell, you can look at the guy and see he hits the gym. You can look at the guy and tell that he keeps himself in shape. So you're not going to pull the, oh, well, he had some pre-existing conditions that won't wash. People understand now that you got these MEs and you got these DAs working together to concoct and craft a lie that is meant to help the defense. The police have thrown away their legitimacy. And these DAs have also had their legitimacy sacrificed as well. But they got to do this because they don't have any other play. Their entire mission, their entire purpose, their entire reason for being is to support white supremacy's enforcement arm, because no system of oppression, no system of corruption can exist without violence to back it up. Because whenever corruption steals from people, whenever corruption robs people, whenever corruption kills people, the natural impulse of individuals and the masses is to stop the source of corruption, stop it from harming people. But that's the reason why you need two things. One, a dedicated group who are there simply to dispense violence, organized violence. That's the police, the enforcement arm of white supremacy. But also, you have to find a way to fool people, trick people, deceive people, shame people, guile people into accepting this brutality, or to otherwise excuse it away. And to do that, you're going to require a propaganda organ. Enter the white media. Now, as more and more people begin to question this, well, you're going to need a white media that's going to become more and more belligerent, more and more aggressive. And that's what they've been doing the last few years. They've had every single one of their shows be nothing more than a non-stop validation of police anti-black racism and violence. Because the idea was they would keep justifying it, and if they kept saying it long enough, the public would look and go, well, maybe the white media is right. Maybe it is just, maybe the public's in favor of it. The public just won't. They've been trying that. I told you about how you had Jeffrey Toobin, that moron. He was the idiot who came up with the phrase, the race card, so that lets you know what he thinks about racism. And he was the main one on CNN saying, well, it's just so hard to convict a cop, you see, just so difficult to convict the public. I mean, it just goes to show the public trusts the police. It's just so difficult because it's the public, you see, it's the public. This is the lie the white supremacy is concocting as they saw more and more pressure building against them, as they saw more and more people confronting them, as they saw themselves being pushed back and facing pressure on every front. It's been a matter of, well, we got to get the public. We got to hide behind the public, because we don't want the public focusing on the police or the DAs. So we got to get the public to focus on themselves. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the grand jury. Yeah, that's the ticket. We'll use the grand jury. And what we'll do is we, as the prosecution, we will bring the grand jury a case that basically says, let the guy go. And that's exactly what happened in Ferguson. You had the prosecutor, Bob McCullough. We now know from the few members of the grand jury who have leaked what occurred in those proceedings that you had the DA's office say, well, basically, you guys can come back with a not guilty. The DA wanted to make it very clear that that's the reason why these grand juries take place in secret. The grand jury is a place where you can hide from the public and go ahead and make sure that nobody gets prosecuted who you don't want prosecuted. And when people ask, well, what happened? What kind of case did you bring? Oh, we tried our best. We tried. Well, we'd like to review that ourselves. After all, transparency is what democracy is about, right? You have people like Sleaze Merritt and Mushmouth Crump and all the rest of these white supremacist sock puppets talking about a clear and transparent investigation. Well, what about the grand jury? Well, the grand jury is secret. Well, how do we know then that the DA did not deliberately bury his own case, did not deliberately tell the jury, don't come back with a bill of indictment. Go ahead and let the guy go. We really don't have a case. How do we know that the DA didn't do that? Because the grand jury proceedings are secret, and they also tell the grand juries you cannot speak about it. That's the reason why grand juries are like that. Organized power understood that, well, at some point, you can go ahead and have the jury trial, you can have the actual jury trial itself be public, but the grand jury is a place where you can go ahead and either you can have somebody indicted who really should not have been indicted at all. A DA can indict a ham sandwich if he wants to, because it's so easy. All he has to do is prove that the event happened. He doesn't have to prove whether or not you did it. That's what the trial is for. The actual trial jury itself is meant to determine that. All he has to do is prove that the event happened. And so this is what's been going on. And the white media has been justifying these tricks and these ploys and these deceptive tactics. And now we see that Mike Freeman is ginning up the exact same thing. They're hoping that, well, we got away with it with Eric Garner. Well, we already know that the public, everybody's heard about the murder of George Floyd, and man, it's going to be tough. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and put together an entire case that says loud and clear, it's going to scream loud and clear, George Floyd basically, he just basically dropped dead for no reason. The police had nothing to do with that. And, maybe he was on drugs or something else. They're going to be putting together a case that basically is another side of the process of the defense. And his goal, the goal of Mike Freeman, is to bury this case at the grand jury. This is where he wants it to die because he was forced to have to do what the public wanted. That racist animal, Freeman, he did not like the fact that he was forced to have to even bring charges. He didn't like that at all. He is a dyed-in-the-wool, hardcore white supremacist, as is the medical examiner. I showed you on my Twitter feed pictures of Mike Freeman giving the medical examiner of Hennepin County a so-called leadership award. How the hell is a medical examiner a leader? Most people don't even, 99% of people who live in America don't even know who the medical examiner is in their county or parish in the case of Louisiana. And yet you got Mike Freeman giving an award to the medical examiner who he works with. Well, I'm sure that the ME isn't sitting there just rubber stamping whatever it is that the DA wants, rather the police, because whenever the medical examiner has brought cases, especially cases that are supposed to go to trial, what does the medical examiner do? What he does is he basically rubber stamps whatever the police or DA line is. That's what he does. He rubber stamps it and says, my findings are that such and such is consistent with whatever the police said. Whatever the DA said, my findings are consistent with that. Or in the case where the police are about to have to get in trouble, being caught yet again engaging in the latest act of anti-black violence. Well, we spoke with the DA and the police, and our findings are that absolutely nothing supports that George Floyd was strangled or otherwise asphyxiated. We watched the guy being strangled for 10 minutes. They sat there, 3 officers, 500 pounds or so, on this guy's torso and neck until he died because he couldn't breathe. Well, this guy probably had drugs, and this is them pulling the same old thing. They're throwing everything against the wall now. And that lets you know that they're getting desperate. They see what's happened. They see that the public is amassed against them. They see the country is turned against them. And the white supremacists with their backs to the wall and nowhere to run, they're just throwing everything out at this point, trying to see if they can get something started. This is their last stand as they see it in Minneapolis. This is the beginning of the end. When you have a situation where the public starts burning police precincts, the enforcement arm of white supremacy happens to be on the run. When that happens, you've lost your authority. And if you've lost your authority, you've lost your power. And what is authority? Authority is whether or not the people are willing to obey you. The people are no longer willing to obey what the police say. Police are like, you're coming with us. You saw what happened in LA. They jumped on the cops. They also did the same thing in DC. Did the same thing in Minneapolis. The police are sitting here trying to act like, well, we're going to be Billy Badass and we're arresting people. No, the people are like, no, you're not. You're not taking anybody. And the cops are powerless to do anything about it. And you got people like Nancy Pelosi, here they are trying to make nice in Congress, but nobody's talking about laws to punish the police, laws to punish prosecutors who refuse to do their jobs. Nobody's talking about laws regarding that. Nobody's talking about how the FBI is going to start bringing indictments. We're going after people. Nobody's talking about punishment. And the DA thinks that he's going to fool people with the grand jury two-step. Oh, why? We're going to take it to the grand jury. You should see what's happening in comment sections and on message boards and in interviews. People are looking and going, nah, we've seen this before. We know the trick. We're wise to the scam now. We know that the grand jury is where you bury your prosecutions at. We know that this is where you try to derail the indictment. We get it. We know what you're trying to do. You don't need a grand jury. You can just bring an indictment yourself. You're trying to get rid of it at the grand jury so you can blame them and hopefully get the heat off of yourself. It's a political maneuver. Burying cases at the grand jury is a political maneuver so that these corrupt, racist prosecutors can blame the grand jury, which basically means the public. Why? We couldn't indict because you guys didn't really want an indictment. You didn't really want an indictment. You didn't want these guys to go to, you wouldn't bring an indictment. That means that you wouldn't convict them either. So it was the public. It was you guys. These are the tricks that white supremacy tries to use in order to keep itself afloat. But it's not working. People do not care that the Hennepin County medical examiner puts out a preliminary report only a few minutes after Mike Freeman was talking about, you guys will see the criminal complaint. You'll be able to see what it is that we have there. Yeah, but the problem was the medical examiner sending out his preliminary report. He couldn't even wait to send the full thing. He couldn't wait to send a full report, a complete report. As a matter of, well, here's my preliminary report. So that lets you know this is what Mike Freeman has been up to the last few days. If the heat gets too hot, well, what we're going to do is we are going to be acting as co-counsel for the defense. That's what Mike Freeman's doing now. Same thing that we saw from Bob McCullough in Ferguson. Same thing that we saw from Dan Donovan in Staten Island after they murdered Eric Garner. Same thing that we saw from Mike Hennepin after the murder of Philandro Castile. We have seen this over and over again. And the thing is, you're not going to have some racist white supremacist DA who sits there and says what the appropriate punishment or what the appropriate charge is. The public says what that is. Justice is the righting of a wrong, and the wrong isn't made right until the people say that it is, and we say it has not been made right. Third degree, that's a joke. And he tries to hide behind, well, Justine Damand, this is what Mohammed Noor got for killing Justine Damand. Mohammed Noor, allegedly, fired his gun in a split instant. He didn't sit there shooting Justine Damand over the course of 10 minutes. He did not sit there with Justine Damand saying that she can't breathe or otherwise saying that you shot me for 10 minutes. He didn't do that. So you cannot even make a comparison like that. But let's you know, Mike Freeman tried that, and even some reporters pointed out, wait a minute, this is different. This is different than Justine Damand. This doesn't even make sense. And he knows it doesn't make sense. That's the entire point. This is a so-called Democrat showing you that when it comes to black people, there is no difference between Democrats and Republicans. They use the exact same strategy whenever it comes time to attack black people. They decide we're going to lean into the controversy because that is part of radical social conditioning. Part of radical social conditioning is that if you do something shocking to the public, something horrible, what happens is people are stunned. People are shocked. They're not really sure how to react to that. And in that moment, you can tell them, well, this is the new normal and you better back up. And the people will be confused because they haven't encountered this before. That's part of social engineering. And that's what the white supremacists are attempting to do, because you go against whatever the expectation would be. If the expectation is, hey, we're putting the arm on these white supremacists in the DA's office, these white supremacists at police headquarters, we're putting the arm on these bastards. And then what they say is, well, we're going to dig in our heels. What they think is the people are going to say, wow, we weren't expecting that. Well, I guess we'll just fold up tent and go home. What's happened is, nope, it's gotten even worse because the people are demanding that when these police thugs, these white supremacist garbage with badges, murder somebody. When you kill a black person, you have got to get the toughest time there is. You don't get off with some penny any third degree anything. It's first degree all the way. Mike Freeman is trying to push back against that because, as I've been telling you, ever since the case of Kenneth Walker, the white supremacists understand at this moment right now, we stand at a pivotal moment. We stand at a critical turning point. White supremacy understands that in order to keep its system of corruption going, you require a dedicated arm of enforcement. Corruption cannot exist outside of violent force to back it up. Because whenever corruption steals from people, whenever corruption robs people, whenever corruption denies people of the formal opportunities that exist, what happens is the people, individuals, and groups are going to rise up against it. So you're going to have a dedicated group who are there strictly for the purpose of doling out unrestrained violence. And then you can have the state say, why? We have a process here and the people have to believe in the process. And you got Mike Freeman going, there ain't going to be no indictment, no punishment. They're just upholding white supremacy, and that's the law of the land. But of course, you cannot fool the people or deceive them or trick them or otherwise lull them back into apathy unless you have a full-time, highly sophisticated propaganda organ churning out the lies meant to deceive the people and get them to sit on their hands and do nothing while they are brutalized and oppressed. And that's where the propaganda arm of white supremacy comes in, i.e., the white media. Of course, the white media has been a shameless cheerleader for the killing of every black person that's ever happened. Of course, the white media has sought to justify the killing of black people and demonize the victims. Of course, the white media carries the police line at every turn. That's their job. The white media is not some autonomous independent organization. They are in fact owned by wealthy white individuals or wealthy white interest groups. They are owned by organizations who benefit from the corruption and depend on the corruption for every crumb of their daily bread. What's that old saying? Behind every great fortune lies an even greater crime. And that being the case, if you know that your fortune is built on criminality, built on systemic corruption, nepotism, cronyism, which is nothing more than saying institutionalized gangsterism, if you know that that is what your prosperity and wealth is based upon, well, what's going to happen whenever somebody says, well, these thugs with badges over here that have been protecting all of your ill-gotten gain and keeping you from being punished for your theft and thievery, these guys need to be stopped. What's your response going to be? These people who you're getting all worked up about who got murdered, these niggers who got murdered over here and you guys are all angry and exercised about it, they weren't good guys, they were not good guys at all. And the white media sees the more lies they've told, they have now made it where they are completely and thoroughly, irrevocably, irretrievably linked with the police. Everybody looks at them and says, hey, you spent years cheerleading for the cops. You're not going to be able to change your tune now. Nobody believes what the white media is saying when the white media is trying to pretend like, we're so sad about this. They ain't fooling nobody. Nobody's fooled by that. Hell, you even had Jake Half-Wit Tapper, who was on CNN, and when he was reading the Hennepin medical examiner's so-called preliminary autopsy findings, even he looked and said, wait a minute, all this stuff that the medical examiner's putting in about underlying heart conditions and potential intoxicants, he was right when Jake Tapper said, why is this even in here? This is very strange, and he's right. Because the medical examiner wanted to make it where his preliminary report would say loudly and clearly, there was absolutely no proof of asphyxia or strangulation. You guys didn't see what you saw. Well, George Floyd, he was just making that up. It was something, it was drugs or it was heart disease or something. Let me tell you something. Whenever you use phrases like coronary artery disease, that basically means plaque buildup. Practically half the population has that to some degree or another because of the American diet. Heavy in fats, heavy in processed materials. That stuff piles up in your arteries and such, just like it does on your teeth. Arterial plaque. At least 50% of Americans, even healthy young ones, have that to some degree or another due to American diet. You can find just a micrometer worth of arterial plaque and coronary artery disease. And as for hypertensive heart disease, a lot of black people in the country have that due to the stress of living under white supremacy. But you don't get to take that to George Floyd, because you can look at that dude and see, did you take a look at the guy's build? Okay, the dude's all muscular and stuff like that. Does he look like somebody who has artery disease or heart disease, like that's stopping him from exercising? So this guy gets himself into excellent physical condition. Oh, but he was ready to die anymore. He could have dropped dead any moment. Really? This is what they've been reduced to, but that's the point. It's supposed to be blatant and in your face. You have shown in the streets, black folks have shown that we're willing to get into the white supremacist faces. So what they're doing is, this is their attempt to show, well, we're still the ones who you're sitting back and waiting to see what we're going to do about it. And that being the case, we're going to show you that we ain't going to change. The white supremacists are trying to foment open confrontation in the streets. I think they want an armed fight in the streets is what they want. Clearly is what they're bucking for. Because while they're doing this, they're upping the ante. What they're doing is they're trying to escalate this. And the reason why is the white supremacists see themselves in a do or die situation. This is one of those moments that could lead to a breakthrough that makes it where white supremacy is going to begin. I mean, you may not think very much about that deadline of, 2040 or 2035, whatever the hell it's supposed to be when white people become a numerical minority in the country. You may not think about that very much, but the white supremacists think about it every waking moment of every day. And what they're thinking is, we may not have the numbers that we need in order to enforce our white supremacist privilege and rule, to make sure that we hold on to the ill-gotten gains that we've stolen, to maintain what we have stolen and raped and pillaged and plundered. We may not have the numbers to do that. And there are all these black folks, especially at the grassroots, who have been saying that we're coming for what's ours. We've stolen most of what the country has, and now you got some black folks saying we're coming to take what's ours and we ain't asking for it. And that's what they're seeing in the streets. People are not asking. Power is not given, it's taken. And you see people in the streets, black people in the streets, taking power. The police have the power to arrest you, yeah, but they ain't been able to exercise it very well, now have they? So understand what's been going on the last few days. This is the empire attempting to strike back, is what they're attempting to do. Now, what needs to happen at this point is for the family of George Floyd to stand up, step forward, and start getting in front of every camera that they can and get in front of the crowds, by the way, and make it very clear that the state's attorney is an anti-black racist. You need to call him out on it. Make it clear that this guy has an open anti-black racial hostility, and because of that, he has to recuse himself from the case because the charges are too low. That they demand that he recuse himself. That's demand number one. Get this case into the hands of someone who's actually going to prosecute it. 2, upgrade the charges. That Chauvin animal, he's supposed to be charged with first-degree murder. Nothing less than that is appropriate. His other 3 co-conspirators, his accomplices, must also be charged with second-degree murder. Those are the appropriate charges. And the EMT who was there, who didn't do anything, needs to be charged with failure to render aid. The family needs to be in front of the cameras making it very clear. This racist DA cannot be allowed to handle this case. It must be taken from him, and he must recuse himself. The case has to be put in somebody else's hands, and also the charges have to be upgraded. The family should be doing that. They should be leading the charge. They should be setting the tone, and the people are going to fall in lockstep behind it, because that's what the people are still angry about. The reason the protests are still going on is because the people are looking and going, okay, what we're seeing is the powers that be are still trying to protect these killers. Now, what's going on also in the minds of the white supremacists is, oh man, things can't possibly get worse than this. Well, if they keep pushing the people, it can get a hell of a lot worse than this. It can get a lot worse. Because people remember what happened a few years back in the summer. Oh, it was a long, hot summer indeed, especially for the police. There were a couple of incidents where police departments wound up being punished en masse in front of the whole world. And now you got cities across America turned up. The police think to themselves that they're going to get out of this if they just make a few phony baloney pretend to be nice. Oh, well, if you guys are using chokeholds and such, please. Chokeholds have been against the law. They've been against department policy in Los Angeles for decades now. And the police still use them and the DAs still refuse to prosecute. This is not a matter of, don't let them fool you with that garbage about, the Cincinnati PD told their officers, you guys should never do that. That's more of that. Well, see, it's a training issue. It's a training issue. Don't fall for that garbage. This is not a training anything. This is a matter of the white supremacists are being allowed to operate with impunity because they have their fellow white supremacists who are the DAs and the judges. The formal structures of the society, the formal law enforcement institutions of the society, the formal judicial institutions of the society have been completely and thoroughly captured and taken over by white supremacists. There's only one of two solutions to that. One, get those white supremacists out of those positions and get people who are actually going to uphold the law instead of subvert the law into those positions. Or, in other words, you're going to have to be handling these situations out of court. That's simple as that. It's going to be one or the other. But what it is not going to be is handing situations over to the Mike Freemans and the other assorted white supremacists with law degrees, and having these bastards decide that they're going to thumb their noses at the black community while they give some sort of pseudo-legal certification to the murderers of black people, that we are not going to have. Acting as a rubber stamp committee for the killing of every black person, we ain't having that. And that brings us to the white media. Yeah, the white media, they've had to change their tune and soften their stance because the problem happens to be they thought they were going to get something going. If they just take the hard line against the black community, well, sooner or later people would be programmed to, so every time one of these niggers gets killed, we're just supposed to look at it as the police doing their job. Oh, the public won't dare check the police. The white media said so. Oh, the white media was bold about it. But they're not so bold about it now, are they? Oh, whatever happened to tough on crime Joe Biden? Now this dude, he sounds like every freaking BLM activist you ever heard. Yeah, all of these people are backing away from their stances because what they realize is that they're delegitimizing themselves. The public has made it very clear that there are conditions for legitimacy. You do not get to bestow legitimacy on yourself. The public is making it clear that they have standards for what they consider to be legitimate. Your power comes from the people. If the people accede to what it is that you say, if the people agree that you can hold this plot of land or you can have these resources or that you can carry out these functions, if the people agree to let you do so, then you've got authority. But your authority comes from them, not the other way around. Because as we are seeing in cities across the nation, if the people decide as a group you don't get to have those powers, then you are powerless. There has been this white supremacist mob mentality that has been allowed to run amok for hundreds of years, and the police have been the vanguard of this demonic mentality. As long as the blue wall stays intact, long as the blue line is held, we can kill niggers and we all stick together, except for the black ones, the black cops, they'll go to prison. But as long as all the white cops and the Asian cops and the Hispanic cops stick together, then none of us go to prison. Well, now what you're seeing is you got the public playing the same game. The cops can be pushed around and mistreated in public. Hell, you had posted on my Twitter page today, posted that in San Antonio, you had this brother who walked up to a San Antonio cop and he had his cell phone camera in hand. The cop takes this guy's cell phone camera, snatches it out of his hand and throws it, and the dude decks him and the cop's out. I ain't talking about something he was just dazed. I mean, he was out like a freaking light. Guy wasn't arrested. The cops are sitting here acting like, we'll do something. No, they ain't going to do it. And that's in Texas where it happened. That's in Texas where that went down. So the cops are understanding if you try to dogpile people, now people are looking going, whoa, we see the cops dogpiling somebody. We're going to jump on them now. The people are being proactive when it comes to protecting one another. The people are being proactive at protecting their neighbors. This is a brand new status quo for the enforcement arm of white supremacy. Brand new status quo. because they understand that at some point the people are going to move beyond. They're going to evolve and progress beyond merely being proactive when the police have jumped on someone and decide we're not going to be allowing you to gun people down the streets, period. We're going to be proactive about that too. So I'm getting a kick out of seeing the white media getting booted around. And we see the propaganda arm of white supremacy, the white media, being confronted directly. No less than CNN themselves found themselves on the business end of one of those protests right there in Atlanta. Oh, you got the first name in news. These guys have eyes and ears everywhere. Oh, this is the white media outlet that more Americans trust. Well, apparently the black folks in Atlanta don't trust them too much. The protesters paid Jeff Zucker's little propaganda mill a house call, and it's no coincidence that they went there. They went there in particular for a reason. They started smashing the front of the building, destroying the foyer. You had to call in half the Atlanta PD just to keep them out. They did that in CNN headquarters. You want to know why? It's because CNN has been cheerleading for the deaths and murders of black people. Freddie Gray was murdered. CNN decided, well, we can't smear him. We tried and it didn't work. So we're going to smear his mother and say she was a junkie. She was a drug addict. Well, what's that got to do with anything? She wasn't even the person who was arrested. Well, we just thought you should know. We just thought it was very interesting that his mother was on drugs. Well, she's recovered now. So what's that got to do with anything? Well, we just think the public should know that his mother was on drugs. We just think that people should know that. Well, does the public deserve to know anything about the cops who killed Freddie Gray? Well, that's not important. They're not the story he is. Brooke Baldwin was cheerleading for the murder of Trayvon Martin, questioning that congresswoman, saying, well, would anybody care if Trayvon Martin wasn't black? Yeah, because the media never cares about the missing white woman of the week, don't you know? And Brooke Baldwin is sitting here trying to reinvent herself. She hears what the black media is saying. She's trying to reinvent herself, just like Amy Klobuchar, trying to play this crocodile tears game while she's on television with that transgender whomever. CNN also decided that it was a good idea to get Jeffrey Toobin as much airtime as possible so that he can cheerlead for the police. So, well, it's just so difficult to convict the police because the public just believe the police. You know, the public just trusts the police. That's just the way it is. CNN has spent years towing the police line and defending the murders of black people. CNN has spent years just repeating whatever it is that the police say when they kill a black person. Spent years deciding, well, we're not going to confront the police. We're not going to question the police. We're certainly not going to make it seem like the police are on some sort of kill spree against black people. Evidence be damned. We're not doing that. It's going to be all about how this black person deserved to die. He was basically a bad person. Or at the very least, we'll smear him so that, well, we don't want you to feel so bad about him because, you know, they were bad people, don't you know? Well, in Atlanta, you had some of those black people who CNN has been cheerleading for the deaths of, who decided to come to CNN Center and lodge a complaint.
People are laughing. Some people are videotaping.
They just threw something on fire, Chris, a firecracker.
Yep.
Something's on fire. Shit.
Nick, you all right?
You okay?
By the way, on a side note, I have newfound respect for Atlanta. I'm not going to say that I'll never call them the skinny jeans capital of black America again, though I would say that after this, I don't care about the skinny jeans quite so much. All of CNN sticking up for the police and demonizing the black victims of police white supremacist violence. And look where it got CNN. They see exactly where it led them to. Yeah, the last few months, CNN's been trying to patch together a little bit of credibility for themselves, trying to change their tune ever so slightly, but no one's buying it because we remember the years and years and decades, truth be told. CNN was started by a neo-Confederate, Ted Turner, that racist piece of trash, and they retain his white supremacist imprint. They've been cheerleading for the deaths of black people and always got something negative to say about black people, and that's fine. The black people decided to show them, hey, if you say that this is what we are, then who are we to prove you wrong? And CNN's finding out that they've thrown away their legitimacy. So while they're sitting here thinking they're going to do a quick 180 and think they're going to reinvent themselves, no one buys it because no one believes anything they have to say. So where are all of the concerned citizens who believe the police at? Where were they at last night when CNN needed them? When CNN Center was being overrun by the people who they've been justifying the murders of? Where were all of these citizens? Where was Jeffrey Toobin at to tell everybody how, well, people they just believe the police. They just like the police. You know, they trust the police. Where was Jeffrey Toobin at? And go ahead and show us some of those suburbanites who were going to go ahead and stick up for CNN because they trust the police so much. Where were they at last night for CNN? See, it's CNN who needs the police because these multinational corporations and the racist billionaires like Ted Turner who own them, behind every great fortune lies an even greater crime. And in order to make sure they don't go to prison, well, you need a dedicated group of thugs, heavily armed, to make sure to protect the corrupt infrastructure. And that's why the media supports the police to the hilt no matter what, because it's not about the public at all. They could care less about the public. It's about making sure that the public never ever puts pressure on the establishment, actually on the white elite, let's call them what they are, that the white elites never are in danger of ever having the public, especially the black portion of it, take back what's been stolen from them. So that's the reason why you got to glorify the police no matter what, and why the police can do no wrong, and why the white media is going to push the police line no matter what. CNN had a good old time pushing the police line, all right. And what they found last night was that they pushed the public too far. They know that they don't have any sort of influence. That's the reason why they're having to pretend as if they're on the side of the good guys, a little bit of lip service, because they understand that the police have lost their legitimacy and they see what happens. The public's decided if you lose your legitimacy, well, as I have always taught you, I've been teaching you guys this for a decade now, legitimacy is important. That's what that police chief for Buffalo Grove or whatever the hell it was, when he was, in my last video, you had the police chiefs pretending to sympathize with the public. And one of them was talking about how legitimacy is part of the bedrock of police interaction with the public. You got to be seen as legitimate. They understand exactly how important legitimacy is. Legitimacy is crucial. Without legitimacy, you can do anything to an institution or a group if you see this organization as being illegitimate. You can ignore them, you can malign them, you can destroy the institution, or what have you, if you see them as illegitimate. The enforcement arm of white supremacy as an institution certainly understands that, and the public is showing it. If we see you as illegitimate, we can do anything to you and it doesn't matter because we've delegitimized you. The white media got a taste of that last night. They understand. The public looks at them and says, these guys are illegitimate. They are not some sort of impartial reporters of events. These guys are a shameless PR wing for the thugs with badges who have been murdering us. They're here to justify the killings of black people, so they're illegitimate. And so since the white media is understanding that, they've had to back down and back up. But they've gone ahead and gotten some of their Negroes, some of these hip-hop fools. Yeah, I saw T.I. Harris. You always wonder why it is I've never had anything complimentary to say about him. You saw why that was. He's over there in Atlanta. And I guess because of the fact that he's living a little bit better than most, he feels like it's okay for him to say, this ain't who he is. He's talking all that garbage about, oh man, we can't be doing this in Atlanta. Maybe some other places, not Atlanta. Man, Jason Black already covered this with Gentrified, okay? Where the hell has T.I. Harris been living at? Well, he's been living in Hollywood mostly these days. See, this is the danger of letting black celebrities speak for you. They'll sit there and tell you that Atlanta's a paradise for black folks and that apparently black folks got Atlanta on lock. The hell you do. You got the freaking immigrants. I've been to Atlanta, by the way. You have the freaking immigrants. They got a bigger share of the community than black folks do. Jason Black put up the doggone sign saying that black people are being run out of Atlanta, and you got those Negroes in there in denial. Yeah, you know, they were in denial in Detroit too for a while. But for T.I. Harris to show who and what he really is, this is a good thing. This is a good thing because I don't want my people putting stock in these black entertainers. Because T.I. Harris, he's depending on white power for his next paycheck. He's depending on white power to cake him off. And speaking of people who are looking to get cake, Killer Mike, I mean, no idiot jamboree is complete until that moron shows up. By the way, Killer Mike, shouldn't he be somewhere with his head buried under Bernie Sanders' desk? I'm just asking for a friend. But Killer Mike, of course, the white media is trying to congratulate these guys. Oh, they were so eloquent. In other words, you got the uprising going on. You have the Black Summer that is now broken out. The Black Spring or Black Summer, whatever you want to call it. And the rest of the world's looking at the United States and going, Well, then, shouldn't there be regime change in the U.S.? Maybe somebody needs to go into the U.S. and change that society because clearly they're killing their own citizens. Hey, weren't you talking about Venezuela for a while? Wasn't the U.S. saying that the Venezuelan government was tyrannical because it's killing its own citizens? And now you got in the United States open fighting in the streets. So that means the U.S. government needs to be changed top to bottom, right? This is the U.S. government trying to find a way to calm it down. They need, because the rest of the world's noticing and they're looking and going, how the world do we carry out tyrannical operations against the rest of the world and claim that, well, you need to be more like the U.S. when everybody's looking and going, but you guys are all messed up. You have the lie of a more or less color-blind society where the Negroes accept their place. And you won't hear any complaining about race because we have already killed half the black folks who would have complained and the other half have been intimidated or otherwise cowed into silence. So you won't be hearing any problems. People don't have a problem with race. At least they know better than to say it. And if they do, well, we've got a couple of Negroes on the payroll. T.I. Harris, Snoop Dogg, P. Dimwit, Dr. Dre, Killer Mike. Yeah, you got all these clowns. And Sucker Mike, that guy, whenever you see the white media patting some black person on the back or applauding them or otherwise trying to big them up, that's your first clue that they're on the take. I don't know how many times I gotta say it. The white media does not praise some black person unless they're saying something that is conducive or useful to the interest of white power. If T.I. and Sucker Mike were actually saying something that threatened white supremacy, something that was actually going to lead to justice, then the white media wouldn't be repeating it. About the only black celeb of any note who's actually saying something real was Ice-T. Tariq retweeted this on his Twitter feed. Ice-T was pointing out people are saying that they should protest like this or demonstrate like that. We tried taking a knee. A riot is a riot. It happens when the people can no longer take the BS. Yeah, the white media is not going to be repeating that. They're not going to be patting Ice-T on the back and saying, well, he's just telling it like it is. You have to accede to the demands of the public. Nobody's actually saying that. Well, let me repeat that. They're not saying to accede to the demands of the public. Instead, the white media is trying to invent a narrative that, just like with politics, well, what does the black community want? They don't want tangibles. What they want is a black female candidate. Well, who says that? Simone Sanders says that. But who does Simone Sanders work for? She works for the DNC, and she's not going to be demanding any changes, so we want to repeat that. This is about trying to figure out if they can control the narrative, if they can find a way to deceive the people. That's what the white media is attempting to do. They're trying to reassert control. They're going to say, oh, the people, they're in the streets and they're speaking, and people are going to go, oh, yeah, that's right. And, well, we know what the people are saying. Oh, right. Well, what are the people saying? They're saying that that they want better police training, and they're saying that law enforcement has to have improved community relations. That's not what the people said at all. What they said is punish these bastards. What they said is if a cop gets accused of assaulting someone, that should be treated as second-degree murder. You kill someone under any circumstances, that's first-degree murder. Off top. That's what the people are saying. But the white media thinks that they're going to redirect it. They've tried that with the black vote. Oh, we can redirect things toward the Democrats if we just pretend. We'll start the sentence off the way that black people have said, and then we're going to end it with some white supremacist tripe, some white supremacist dogma. At least that's been the plan. So for the members of the white media and assorted white supremacists who lurk on my YouTube channel or Twitter feed who are wondering, well, what do we got to do to stop the uprising? Well, in the case of George Floyd, for a start, what you do is you have Mike Freeman recuse himself, and you put another DA in there, another prosecutor, one who is going to upgrade the charges to what they should be. First-degree murder for Derek Chauvin, second-degree murder for his accomplices, and failure to render aid for that EMT who sat there. Everybody who had a part in the death of George Floyd is to be held accountable. And then what's going to also happen is there's going to have to be actual action. I don't want no freaking laws being written. Don't waste my time with no laws. What I want to see is I want to see prosecutors getting hemmed up, law degrees getting taken, people being prosecuted for prosecutorial misconduct. Anytime you decide that you're going to try to bury a case at the grand jury, that's going to be stopped. That should be automatic prosecutorial misconduct. You do not, if a cop has been accused of a crime, you don't need no grand jury. You just go straight to the indictment. Why? Because we understand what it is that they're trying to do. Now, those would be a good start. There's a lot more, but that'd be a good start. And if the white media thinks they're going to take control of this conversation and they're going to steer it in another direction, they got another thing coming. The Black Summer is officially underway, and it's going to be a long, hot one indeed.